emergency? What's your emergency?
Detectives say the dead woman is yet to be formally identified, but it's believed she's 49 and from Bridlington.
Is it possible to get away with murder? What does a killer do after committing the most heinous of crimes?
This crime, it was unnecessary, it was brutal.
Do they carry on as normal and hide in plain sight? Or go on the run?
It was scary. Just don't know what he could do if we were desperate. And I knew it were him.
He's on the run from the police. This man is angry.
How do the actions of a killer after their crime influence the police investigation?
We need to speak to this man as a priority in relation to that murder investigation, and we would consider him dangerous.
By focusing on the aftermath, we unpick the mindset of a killer.
He turned around, he had the knife in his hand.
Understand the motive and reveal what the killer did next. Terry Carter met his wife, Bay, an artist at a concert in Nottingham in 1993. They quickly fell in love, and 12 months later moved to Bay's native China to get married and start a family. After 20 years away, the couple returned to the UK to open a guest house with their 2 children and settled in the Yorkshire coastal town of Bridlington.
The community of Bridlington is a seaside resort, so there's quite a mix of people up there. It's quite close-knit in many respects. You know, it's a very busy town. There's a lot of guest houses down there. Marshall Avenue, it's a little way from the actual promenade.
The guest house itself was fairly typical in lots of ways. It was very much the sort of place I would have expected to have found in a seaside town.
Terry looked after the bookings and front of house, while Bay worked hard behind the scenes, ensuring the rooms remained comfortable for their guests.
Bay Carter was a nice, friendly, trusting lady at 49 years old. She had no enemies.
But life for this family was about to be ripped apart in the most brutal fashion. It was a quiet morning at the hotel, with just 1 guest having checked in the day before, and 2 more due to arrive that day.
Carter, he'd been to visit his mum in hospital. Bay Carter, that spent the day putting up curtains, I think in the dining area, sewing.
When Terry Carter arrived back at the guest house that night, he expected to be greeted by his wife. Instead, all he found was a deserted hotel.
After trying to locate her in the guest house, he'd rung her mobile phone, which rang out in the living room. And he noticed that room 5 was locked, which was unusual. Unoccupied rooms weren't normally locked. He came down to see if he could find the master keys.
With no sign of his wife, Terry started to panic. After a frantic search, he found the set of master keys. When he opened the door to room 5, he was met by the most horrific sight.
Hello, police emergency. What's your emergency?
Terry had found the lifeless body of his wife, Bay. She had been subjected to a vicious attack. The 49-year-old landlady had been stabbed in the chest, suffering a fatal wound to the heart. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Superintendent Matt Baldwin was assigned to the case.
There's so many things going through your mind to understand exactly what we've got. Visiting a scene and seeing for yourself is the best way, in my view, to do that, to understand the layout of a premises, to understand the opportunities forensically, and also what may have happened inside that building.
Police descend on the scene and confirm the discovery of the dead body of Bay Carter.
Bay's body was on the floor of room 5, between a chest of drawers and a bed, literally laid on the floor, her feet facing the door, and her arms crossed across her chest.
The victim had been either kicked or stamped on her face and head. A knife had penetrated through the sternum, that's the breastbone, which can be up to ½ an inch thick.
I'm always shocked by the capacity of human beings to deliver extreme violence on others.
The next morning, the news is made public. Police launch a murder investigation.
Residents in Marshall Avenue say they were woken in the middle of the night by blue flashing lights and the sound of the police helicopter.
Bay Carter was found by her husband in the bed and breakfast they ran together. Police has officers with Mrs. Carter's husband and children.
As an investigation begins, police need to ask who would want Bay Carter dead. They start by focusing on those closest to Bay.
This is a very strong statistic. 2 a week, on average, women killed by a former partner, which always puts a partner or a former partner at the top of the list of suspects. That must have put quite a lot of attention on Bay's husband.
Terry Carter is questioned by police.
Terry obviously gave an account to us, and it was quite clear that he was unaware of what had happened to Bay Carter in the guest house, and he'd been elsewhere doing some work on bookings and such like.
Police verify Terry's account, and he is ruled out as a suspect. Who else could be behind this brutal murder?
No one knew who had done it, why they'd done it, but obviously there's a lot of shock. You know, she was well liked.
Having ruled out Bay's husband, Terry, police need to find a suspect. They've established there were 3 guests staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. 2 of them, cyclists, have been accounted for, but there's a 3rd who appears to have vanished from the scene. Police urgently need to track this person down.
Yeah, there were belongings of his still in the room. Obviously, he'd left in a hurry, he'd left his belongings behind. There were items of clothing, the bed was unmade. There were items, receipts, various other bits and pieces. He clearly needed to get out of the guest house as soon as possible.
This particular visitor had booked to stay for 3 nights, but had left 2 nights early. And when he checked in, he'd used the name John Davis.
We did some very simple inquiries using police systems to understand what intelligence we had on somebody called John Davies, and also the mobile phone number given.
But these inquiries failed to turn up anything useful. The missing guest has left no trail. Police urgently need to locate him, to question him about the events on the night of Bay Carter's death. 24 hours later, the investigation takes another turn. The post-mortem has revealed some further horrifying details.
Bay Carter had no defensive injuries. She had no injuries to her hands. There wasn't evidence of a struggle of any sort.
To actually penetrate the breastbone and then for the knife to carry on into the heart, into the aorta beneath, takes a lot of force. That knife has struck the body very hard. So the stab wound to Bay Carter is in the middle of the chest, going through the breastbone. It is difficult to imagine that anybody does not know how many vital organs there are there. A stab wound in that location, the only logical conclusion is it is there to kill.
Equally disturbing was the discovery of a distinctive set of footprints on Bay's face. suggesting the killer had stamped on her before he fled.
It was delivered with real intent. Once he dragged Bay's body into room 5, he then decided to inflict facial injuries upon her, which indicated a mindset of severe violence, in my view.
He stamps on her face and he leaves his boot mark and indentation on her face. That violence was unnecessary, the deed was done, but it says something about the hostility he felt towards her in that moment, the desire to stamp her out. It's the clear message of power and control.
The killer may have left his mark, but there is one thing he has not left behind: the murder weapon. And the post-mortem has also given a clue to the type of knife used to stab Bay.
The weapon was described as a knife with a very thick blade and some very sharp serrated edges to it.
The kind of knife you can buy in any sort of DIY store.
It appears that not only did the killer bring the knife with him to the guest house, but that he is also left with it and could kill again.
He was a very dangerous individual. My fear was that he would take the opportunity to inflict further violence on some other innocent member of the public.
This type of killing is always a concern for the police. They were dealing with a very dangerous individual, and there would have been immense pressure on them to identify who that person was.
Police have a missing man and a name: John Davis. As for the killer, a profile is starting to emerge. Police know this person is violent, potentially still has the murder weapon, and is no longer on the scene. But suddenly, the police get a vital lead.
We could attribute the phone number given by John Davies to a man called John Heald.
We had a fairly recent picture from police computer systems of John Heald.
Unlike John Davis, John Heald was known to the police. Could this be Bay Carter's killer?
We knew that John Davies was in fact John Heald. He was a person who checked in his mobile number, subscribed to John Heald, not John Davies. And so we were able to use that image to look for a person fitting his description.
An all-force alert has been issued to find this man, John Heald.
We need to speak to this man as a priority in relation to that murder investigation, and we would consider him dangerous.
The police are advising people not to approach John Heald, but to call 999.
Whilst it is necessary for the police to put out public appeals when criminals are on the run, when it comes to individuals like John Heald, you're talking about a violent killer. You're talking about somebody who's willing to use a knife to brutalise a woman. It's either going to make him potentially hide because he doesn't want to be found, or it could make him strike again.
Police now need to look in detail at the movements of one man around the time of Bay Carter's murder. Where was John Heald at that moment? If Heald is the killer, police need to discover what he did next.
Bearing in mind, he had a number of hours on us by the time we started. He's left the guest house at some point prior to 10:30 that night. And my focus is on trying to not only locate him, but understand his movements from that time.
To find out how John Heald left the crime scene, police start by gathering CCTV.
CCTV is hugely important in an investigation like this. We covered thousands of hours of CCTV footage, not only from premises such as shops and pubs, council-run CCTV images of streets, but also private CCTV from people's private premises along streets in Bridlington.
And it's the CCTV which throws police their next vital clue in trying to track Heald down.
We'd recovered CCTV footage of him on the day he arrived in Bridlington buying a mobile phone from the Tesco store. We were able to get the number of that mobile phone from Tesco's, the phone that then became important to our inquiry rather than his previous telephone, which he stopped using.
With time ticking and Bay's killer still on the loose, police throw resources at the manhunt. There's now 150 officers across 2 counties on the trail of John Heald. Traces on the new mobile suggest Heald is heading to South Yorkshire, an area he's familiar with. Then suddenly, it all goes quiet.
John Heald took the decision that to evade capture, he would turn off his mobile phone, seek no contact with anybody.
He'd gone off grid, so to speak.
Police are already 4 days behind Heald. They are now forced to resort to old-fashioned, hands-on detective work, appealing for witnesses, making door-to-door inquiries, and offering a reward for sightings.
We had significant search parties, police search advisors, and officers searching a wide area for John Heald. We were relying on public assistance, sightings of John Heald, and we put out a £10,000 reward to try and assist with that. And we were following up every sighting that we got of him.
South Yorkshire Police say they've had almost 250 calls from the public in response to their appeal for help into the murder of Bridlington B&B landlady Bay Carter. Police have been looking for the 53-year-old from Rotherham for a week now.
We received hundreds of reports from members of the public, sightings of John Heald all over the country. And all made with good faith, but nevertheless, those sightings create a huge amount of work, and we had to spend time ensuring that we understood whether those sightings were valid or not.
In this instance, police have to put themselves into the mind of a killer. What does a killer do next?
Heald's a man with a history of violence. He's on the run from the police. This man is challenged. This man is angry. There's somebody who's very used to using violence and very willing to use violence.
And when you're looking for a killer, you're really concerned that they're going to commit further offences.
Suddenly, new information comes to light, which reveals where Heald headed to on the night of the attack on Bay.
This image is really interesting. It shows John Heald entering the railway station at Bridlington at 22:35 hours on Friday, the 18th of July. And we know that at this time, Bay's body is in room 5 at the Moorland Guest House.
CCTV shows Heald boarding the train at around 10:45 p.m. on the night of the killing.
He looks relatively calm. He's clearly focused on the journey he's going to make to get back to South Yorkshire. He's drinking from a bottle of vodka on the train.
Police watch as Heald leaves the train at Beverley, a town 20 miles away from Bridlington. Then, the trail goes cold.
Approximately 11 o'clock at night, and the doorbell rang. And there was a guy stood there wanting a room for the night. He'd missed his connection. He came in, and I went to get the key for him and took him up to the room.
This visitor is John Heald. As yet, he is unknown to the public. Just another guest wanting a room for the night.
So we both walked into the room, and then I shut the door behind me. His demeanour was quite agitated, and he was also telling me that he would be getting a very early train. He would be leaving about 5 o'clock in the morning, which I also thought was a bit odd because there isn't a train from Beverley at that time in the morning.
Heald settles down for the night. This hotel owner has no idea she has a killer under her roof, and that just 1 hour earlier, John Heald had brutally stabbed Bay Carter to death. How had John Heald evaded police capture for 7 days? We're about to discover where Heald went after the trail went cold. What did this killer do next? Having caught a train from Bridlington to Beverley, near Hull, Heald books into a guest house opposite the train station for the night. The landlady, Jane Scott, has no idea she is harbouring a killer.
He came down and said he'd put the wrong mobile number on his form, so he'd obviously written a mobile number down that he probably didn't want us to have. He asked my husband if there was anywhere open to get a drink, which made John think a bit, oh, well, had he been drinking, or because he seemed very agitated. So then he went out of the front door, and that was the last we saw of him.
He got up early the next morning, got in a taxi outside Beverley Railway Station to Hull Paragon Station, where he got a train to Doncaster.
Heald is heading in the direction of his hometown, Rotherham. On the way, he makes a stop at an area of South Yorkshire well known to him, Mexborough.
Most criminals like to operate in what we call comfort zones, and one of the reasons is they know all the escape routes, they know where the police are likely to be, they know where the CCTV cameras are. He knows all of the hiding places, and he knows, most importantly, where not to go.
Heald knows it's likely the police will have tracked his movements from Bridlington to Beverley. He knows he won't be able to stay ahead of them for too long. He's left a trail of clues everywhere he's been, and now needs time to plan his next move. It's time for the game to change. So John Heald goes off-grid.
He disappeared. They couldn't find him. He'd gone completely underground. It was clear he was back in South Yorkshire, but beyond that, no one seemed to know where he might be.
Heald continues on foot in the direction of Rotherham, 5 miles west of Mexborough.
John Heald very quickly decided that he wasn't going to use a mobile phone, he wasn't going to walk around in the hours of daylight.
His only option is to lay low. For the next 4 days, Heald hides in woodland, somewhere on the outskirts of Rotherham. He knows time is running out.
Police say John Heald has been seen in the Doncaster and Rotherham areas in the last 24 hours.
Heald then sleeps rough for 5 days in woodland. Waiting for the heat to cool down, he knows that the police will be searching the addresses that he's used before, maybe seeing friends of his. So creating that distance means that maybe in a while he'll be able to go back and call on their services.
But living rough is not easy, even for a desperate hunted killer. John Heald has evaded capture for a week, but his name and photograph are now everywhere in the Yorkshire area. Having hidden in the woods for days, what John Heald does next is surprising. He comes out of hiding. Was it hunger, thirst, or just a need for it all to be over, which leads Heald to seek refuge in a local cafe?
Leave it with us and we'll get someone to take a look. Bye.
Yeah, we were getting a lot of calls with clearly good intent, but ultimately he had to come out of where he was. He had to try and get food.
Staff at the nearby Angels Cafe were about to receive an unwelcome customer.
Well, I was here, so I saw him from here, actually. And he just walked by and straight in.
And I knew it were him, and I just looked at my uncle and he nodded his head.
My niece said to me, "This is him."
He just walked in.
It was scary. It was quite scary when he came in. Because you don't know, do you? You just don't know what he could do if you're desperate. It looks as if he'd been living rough. He'd got a bag, Auntie Phoebe got a bag with his coat over it, mucky jeans, and his hands were filthy. As soon as he'd gone out of the door, I was straight to police because I knew it was him.
A member of the public had seen him outside and the cafe owners rang us. The police responded to that immediately and we arrested him.
53-year-old John Heald was arrested in Rotherham on Friday. Police say he's being spoken to by detectives investigating the murder of Bay Carter, who was stabbed to death 10 days ago.
For 7 days, John Heald had led the police on a merry dance across 60 miles of South Yorkshire countryside. Now they had their suspect, but they still had unanswered questions. Would Heald reveal the motive behind his actions? Following his arrest, police discovered the area of woodland where Heald had been hiding for the past week. A search unearths important evidence, the murder weapon. But a crucial piece of the jigsaw puzzle remains missing. The clothes worn by Heald when he stabbed Bay Carter. Police begin to wonder whether Heald might have had an accomplice who had helped him dispose of the blood-soaked clothes.
We spent hours and hours reviewing CCTV images from Doncaster and the Mexborough area. We spent time looking at images from pubs in and around the location. His clothing does change, but his shoes are always the same.
With Heald now safely in custody, police get their first opportunity to question their suspect. But John Heald isn't talking.
Do you know which room number 5 is?
No comment.
Have you met Bay Carter in the past?
No comment.
Them injuries caused by,
No comment.
During the interview stage of the investigation, John Heald took the option to say no comment to the vast majority of questions put to him.
Just as police inquiries seem to have hit a brick wall, a call comes in from a member of the public, and it changes everything. The caller is John Ward, a friend of Heald, and he claims to have evidence that John Heald was responsible for the death of Bay Carter.
John Ward was somebody who he'd known for a period of time. They would drink together, and I think he saw John Ward as somebody who he could rely on and who would support him.
John Ward tells police that on the night of the killing, he received a text message from John Heald. In this message, Heald had admitted killing the landlady, but claimed he had acted in self-defense.
John Heald explained how he'd been involved in a fracas with 2 men and this lady had got involved or got in the way, and he had stabbed her and killed her.
In Humberside, John Heald has been charged with killing Bay Carter, but he's still refusing to cooperate with police.
Fingerprint on the door frame of room 5 has been identified as your fingerprint. So tell me about that.
Well, when I walk past room to room, you tend to nose into rooms, don't you? So I've probably touched the frames on most of the places. Like I've done it bathroom.
Right, okay.
So my fingerprint might have been on all the doors.
Okay.
It was the door across from my room as well, because I tried that to have a look in other rooms, see what the rooms were like.
But police still don't have a motive.
And have you caused this single stab wound to her chest?
No comment.
We'd pieced together where he was, what he'd been doing, and the sequence of events. What we didn't know is why he chose to brutally attack Bay Carter, stab her in the chest with the jab saw, and leave her body in room 5.
To understand Heald's motive, police would have to go back further in time, to what brought John Heald to Bridlington in the first place.
Friday, 18th of July 2014, should have been a day like any other. But life in this coastal town changed forever, the moment a new visitor arrived at the Morayland guest house. A beloved wife and landlady, brutally killed. The suspect on the run for 7 days. But precisely what were the events leading up to the 18th of July that had brought a killer into the lives of those living on Marshall Avenue?
At that point, we didn't know what he'd done previously to come into Bridlington.
John Heald was native to the South Yorkshire area, had spent all his life in and around that area. He'd got a number of children to different women. He'd never been married. He was a building site labourer for the majority of his life, doing manual work.
I think he was either 12 or 13 when he first appeared in the juvenile court. And mostly at that time it was for things like burglary and stealing cars, and his record as he got a little older included offences of violence.
John Heald was 22 when he was jailed for the first time, serving 6 months for possession of an offensive weapon and assaulting a police officer. He spent more time behind bars aged 23 for burglary, and again at 24 for actual bodily harm.
The earlier somebody starts offending, the more likely they are to continue that offending through the rest of their life. And if their early offending is serious, then that's an even stronger relationship.
Then police discovered serious allegations against Heald in the week leading up to Bay's death. He was suspected of sexually assaulting a woman in his home county of South Yorkshire. Could this be a clue to the motive?
John Heald was a controlling individual. He was in a relationship where he was extremely jealous. That relationship had come to an end. He was unaccepting of those circumstances.
John Heald is one of those human beings who is incredibly rageful. He's built up hostility and rage towards women in particular.
Following the alleged sexual assault and afraid of the reprisals from the victim's family, John Heald fled Rotherham.
Oh, he seemed to be in a state of some paranoia. He thought that perhaps the family of the woman were after him, and he was just on edge. He was whipping himself up into a frenzy.
So Heald picked the first train station he came across, bought a ticket, and headed to Bridlington.
There was no reason apparent why John Heald would have gone to Bridlington. He talked to John Ward about going somewhere for a few days. He talked about going to the coast. I suspect he's probably just looked at where he can get a train from Doncaster too, easily, and there was a Doncaster train to Bridlington.
Heald arrived into Bridlington station at 2:55 p.m. He checked into the Morayland Hotel using the pseudonym John Davies.
A desperate, paranoid, and ultimately very dangerous man. The history of violence. Ingredients for a truly horrendous set of events.
On the morning after checking in, John Heald had breakfast at the Morayland before heading to the pub at lunchtime.
He'd had conversations with both Terry and Bay Carter. He'd given a story about how he may need to move to a double room because his wife was coming to stay with him.
John Heald wants to look like an upstanding citizen, and the way he does that is to provide Bay and Terry with an idea that he's a married man, and not only a married man, one who shortly will be joined by his wife. Instantly, for Terry and Bay, that will make him seem trustworthy.
In the afternoon, Terry Carter was working on reception. 2 guests departed, and later 2 male cyclists checked in. With all his guests accounted for, Terry left the hotel around 6 p.m. to visit his mum in hospital, leaving Bay alone to complete her work. Soon after, John Heald returned from the pub.
He was drinking a lot. I think 1 or 2 people saw him later on and noticed that he did appear to be somewhat drunk.
Police believe it's this combination of drink, depression and paranoia that gave rise to what happened next.
He was concerned about people looking for him in the Bridlington area, and he was also concerned that 2 men had come to the guest house to try and find him. He talked about a conversation that he could hear downstairs where he thought they were talking about retribution that they wanted to inflict upon him. He wanted to get out of the guest house. He'd been tapped on the shoulder.
In his paranoid state, fearing he was about to be attacked, Heald felt a hand on his shoulder. Rather than wait to find out who it was, he lashed out. Bay Carter, who had only wanted to check on him, had no chance, as Heald buried the blade deep into her chest, piercing her heart.
He turned around, he had the knife in his hand. There was some pulling and tugging with the weapon. So he stabbed her, panicked, dragged her body into room 5, locked the door, put the keys back in his room under the mattress and left.
He grabs his bag and flees the hotel.
He left the Moorland guest house as soon as he could, and he took a very direct route to Bridlington train station.
But 7 days later, thanks to an eagle-eyed member of the public, police finally caught up with Heald.
John Heald went on trial for the murder of Bay Carter and the sexual assault of an ex-partner. He accepted that he killed the victim, but denied it was deliberate and premeditated. But the prosecution had built a solid case based on compelling evidence.
But before a verdict could be returned and a sentence delivered, there would be a final twist.
John Heald was a controlling and dangerous man. The thought of someone else deciding his fate would have been unbearable for him.
My colleague, who was the DS on the investigation, he rung me. I was literally just putting my shoes on to leave the house to go to the court. And he said, I think you better sit down, I've got some news for you. All right. And he told me that John Heald had hung himself in his cell that morning.
John Heald was due to return to court this morning, waiting to hear his fate in his murder trial. Then this lunchtime, confirmation that John Heald was found hanged in his cell at Hull Prison.
He may not have been able to cope with the idea of life in prison, and it was one final act of control. You're not going to find me guilty, you're not going to put me in prison.
He sensed that it wasn't going to go in his favour, and quite frankly, I think he took the easy way out.
A jury could not return any verdict on somebody who was dead. That's a matter of law.
It left a lot of questions unanswered, left the family not knowing why Bay Carter had been killed.
Mrs. Carter's husband has sat in the public gallery throughout this trial, hearing every detail about his wife's death.
Terry Carter expressed his frustration and anger that they would never really get the answers they were hoping for.
It felt like John Heald had managed to avoid hearing the words guilty in relation to his murder of Bay Carter. A lot of murder investigations, the people are connected. There's some connection, there's some motive, there's something that you can say, this is why this happened. In this case, there was nothing like that. Bay Carter was simply a landlady in a guest house, putting her trust in people that walked through the door to stay in her premises.
Emergency, which service? What's the address of the fire?
A killer who thought he'd covered his tracks and fooled investigators.
Is it possible to get away with murder? What does a killer do after committing the most heinous of crimes? Do they carry on as normal and hide in plain sight?
He set fire to that property and walked out.
He came across like you could pass him in the street, he could be anybody.
Or go on the run?
We've got to find this man. We need to identify him.
How do the actions of a killer after their crime influence the police investigation? By focusing on the aftermath, we unpick the mindset of a killer, understand the motive, and reveal what the killer did next.
Peter Fassily grows up in Greater Manchester to an Italian family of 3 siblings.
He was a character, always having a dry sense of humour. He was one that helped me ride my bike for the first time. He was 7 years older than me, but was always in the kitchen, even when Mum's making things, especially when my mum was doing cherry pie. He used to always try to help, but then he used to help himself to a bit when no one was looking. He was a laugh, you know, he was all right. He just got on well.
He was always quite happily and bubbly, always had something to do, and would tell you sort of what he was up to and sort of where he was going.
He was always on the go, always joking. You couldn't say anything bad about him. Any problems, he'd give you his last penny to help anybody. You know, he was always there for anyone.
At the age of 58, Peter moves from Manchester to the quiet suburban neighbourhood of Northolt, on the outskirts of London.
I mean, down this street, we're quite neighbourly and friendly, and we know most of the people. So yeah, there is a good community spirit around here.
I've lived here 60 years. It's pleasant, you know. Most people say good morning, good evening, and do help if you get stuck in something.
Peter never married or started a family and lived alone in a semi-detached bungalow. Although he enjoyed the solitary life, he remained a friendly face in the community. And as a computer technician by trade, was always ready to lend a helping hand.
Peter always loved computers from day one, anything electronic. He was always on the go, fixing anything. Anyone had a problem, they asked him and he'd mend it. He didn't even have to blink, he just could do it blindfolded, if you say. He always just knew what to do.
And as a single gay man, it was his computer Peter turned to meet new people.
But in the world of online dating, not everyone is as they seem.
The residents of Rubens Road are awoken by a raging fire.
Emergency, which service? What's the address of the fire?
The authorities are alerted and on the scene in a matter of minutes.
I was upstairs in bed and they all the sirens and whatnot. And I thought, what the devil's happening out there? It wasn't one fire engine, it was about 3 or 4.
All I remember is seeing smoke and thinking that, oh, someone's having like, I don't know, like a barbecue and it's getting blacker and blacker.
Neighbours soon realised the burning house Is that belonging to Peter Fasserly?
There was police there was ambulance, the fire brigade was still there for a good couple of hours, and it was just awful, like just completely burnt, like black, and not how you remember seeing the house.
When fire officers enter the property, they find Peter inside, but they quickly realise he's already dead.
They rang me when I just broke down. I just couldn't believe it. It was just, you just wouldn't think, you know, you're chatting the other day and no, I'm not going to see him again. It's horrible.
Authorities inspect the house, looking for any clues to establish a cause of death and what started the fire.
What police would be looking for is, was there a break-in? Are there signs of any break-in? Anything about the victim? Was there anything suspicious? Did any of the neighbours hear anything?
The post-mortem results come back clear, suggesting nothing out of the ordinary.
When a pathologist and a forensic pathologist come to a case, you're given a background, you're told what the circumstances are as they're understood at the time, and that informs your investigation. On the face of it, this looked very simple. There is evidence that Mr. Fasserly has inhaled smoke, so he was alive when that fire was burning. We have an older man with underlying disease in the heart. We have a house fire with all of the fumes and the stress that would produce. And conclusion, a very reasonable conclusion, would be that that man has died as a result of a combination of smoke inhalation and the heart disease he has.
Next, the fire brigade make their assessment.
There was an investigation into that fire once the body had been discovered, and it was fairly swiftly determined to be an accidental fire, an accidental death, and essentially the case was closed.
We know that Peter's got a heart problem. There was no disruption in the property to speak of. There was no break-in. There was no one calling 999 because they could hear Peter screaming. So all those factors together, and with the fire brigade, you know, suspecting there was electrical fault with the light bulb, then that was the natural conclusion that Peter had died as a result of an accident.
Investigators concluded Peter Fasserly, a 58-year-old with heart problems, had died in an accidental blaze.
As news breaks, Peter's family and friends were surprised by the circumstances of his death, but had to accept the verdict.
There was nothing I could do about it, and I just had to get on dealing with all the funeral, because fires happen. And they did say they thought it was an electrical fault, and that's all they could give us at the time.
Very strange. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I remember thinking, how did it happen?
I just remember walking past with the dogs in the morning thinking how sad it is, you know, and not really knowing what had happened, just that there had been a fire and the chap wasn't there anymore.
And the neighbours had good reason to be suspicious. Almost 2 years after his uncle's death, Peter's nephew Chris had boxed up some of Peter's belongings, which had been salvaged from the fire. One of these items was Peter's hard drive.
I'd looked through the computer expecting to find the research he'd done on the family tree. What I found was a video file that seemed to take up the majority of space on the hard drive. I'd opened the video file and it just seemed to be some camera footage of Peter just sort of sat in his house watching telly, just eating tea.
But when Chris looks at the date of the video file, he notices something important.
I'd looked at the timestamp on the file and found it was the day of the fire, and I'd sort of flicked through hoping just to find by nearest to the end of the file maybe what caused the fire, and an explanation. Was it the light bulb? Was it something else in the flat? But what I soon sort of found that there was somebody else that had been in the flat that day with him.
Chris had discovered webcam footage showing his uncle was not alone on the night he died. Who is this person? And could he know more about the fire that occurred that night in Peter's flat?
As he walked in, sort of, he spoke casually with Peter. They appeared to know each other and appeared to have met before.
Chris skipped to the end of the file to see if it would reveal clues to the fire which killed his uncle.
What sort of seemed odd on there, where I'd skipped to towards the end of the file, was sort of Peter's flat. Like it had been ransacked. There was pieces of his stereo sat on the sofa, pieces of computer that clearly been moved. I sort of began to skip around the file, trying to see what had sort of happened. Maybe there was sort of a burglary, something had gone on.
Immediately, Chris was suspicious and contacted the police. Who was this man, and did he know more about his uncle's untimely death? What police don't know yet is that there's a sinister link between the death of Peter Fasely and one 1,000 miles away in Rome.
Italian authorities are called to the home of a 67-year-old retired tour guide, Vincenzo Iale, in a seaside village on the outskirts of Rome.
Neighbors have become concerned when Vincenzo's light remained on in his home for an entire week.
During this week, he didn't go at 3 or 4 meetings that he had with friends.
But when police arrive, they walk into an horrific scene. Vincenzo has been murdered.
Diverse ferite d'arma da taglio sul corpo di Vincenzo Iale, 68 anni, della provincia di Brescia, ma da molto tempo residente a Tor Vaianica, ritrovato senza vita nella sua abitazione sul litorale romano, ieri pomeriggio in via Mar dei Coralli. Ora si indaga sul passato del pensionato, che ha lavorato come tour operator e per questo ha viaggiato molto, anche se dalla descrizione dei vicini di casa emerge il ritratto di un uomo solitario.
Italy correspondent Michael Day is hot on the case.
I was in the Foreign Press Association in Rome one morning and I heard some journalists discussing something. It sounded quite interesting. A police officer, a carabinieri officer, described the cord tied around the person's neck. And he talked about the ferocity of the crime. He seemed quite shocked by what he saw, and he said other officers were as well.
The results of the post-mortem reveal Vincenzo was killed a week before his body was found.
After Mr. Iale's post-mortem examination, it was clear that he had died of a homicidal ligature strangulation. He had stab wounds, but they hadn't really contributed, and his cause of death was given as asphyxia due to ligature strangulation.
When Italian investigators examine the scene of crime, they find a robbery has taken place.
His bank cards had been stolen. Subsequently, cash was taken from his account, so it appeared that his PIN number had been given up, which led the investigators to think he probably may have been tortured as well.
But with no sign of a break-in, did Vincenzo know his killer?
My name's Dr. Jane Monckton-Smith, and I'm a forensic criminologist. So my work is focused on homicide prevention, so I look at patterns and behaviours of killers to see if we can intervene and stop them. Well, the first thing police will do is look for somebody who's had contact with the victim. They will probably go to a lot of electronic and passive data to verify what that person has said and to track their movements in a chronology to see who they can place at the scene at the time.
When the body of Vincenzo Iale was found, they searched for the investigate who were the person who contacted for the last time Vincenzo Iale on the social network, on the emails, on the phones.
When Italian police check Vincenzo's phone, they discover he was last in contact with a 26-year-old man. This man is a British national called Jason Marshall.
Italian police need to find out who Jason Marshall is and his movements since arriving in the country a week or two previously. They put Jason Marshall under surveillance using his mobile GPS signal. And then using CCTV, they quickly discover Jason Marshall has been using Vincenzo's credit card since his murder a week ago.
They watched Marshall going to the cash machine and use the credit card of the victim.
But detectives cannot arrest Jason Marshall yet. They need to uncover more evidence if they are to link him with Vincenzo Iali's murder. It's been 1 day since the body of Vincenzo Iali was discovered by Italian police. Detectives have followed Jason Marshall to a flat belonging to a local man in the Casal Marina district in Rome.
Investigators were tracking Marshall. They have seen Marshall entering into the flat. They were outside the building.
Detectives have been outside the building for 4 hours. But with the shift ending, they leave the scene, leaving Jason Marshall inside.
Neighbors are alerted to the sound of a blood-curdling scream in the apartment where Marshall is last seen. When police arrive, they find a 55-year-old man injured and tortured to near death. He describes his attacker and says his name is Jason Marshall.
Jason Marshall is a wanted man. Police know he's dangerous. And he's 2 hours ahead of them. The hunt is on, and they need to establish what he will do next.
Police track Jason Marshall using his phone to a bus route, leaving the local area.
Everybody these days has an electronic footprint. We leave it with our, cash cards, we leave it with our phones, we leave it with our cars, and it's very easy for the police these days to track who has been where and when.
Police manage to stop the bus and arrest Jason Marshall. And what they find on him is alarming.
When Marshall was arrested, he had on him various items that he'd used to disguise himself as a police officer, a retractable metal truncheon, a pistol that he put onto his utility belt.
They found on him a police baton, a false gun, and the badge of the British Embassy. It said to investigators that he had diplomatic immunity because he worked for the British Embassy in Rome.
Yet when authorities look into Jason Marshall's background, they discover he did not work for the British Embassy. Police also uncover more items from him that are crucial.
There were various items that the police recovered that clearly linked him to these 2 attacks in Italy.
Once they'd apprehended him, they found possessions belonging to the murder victim Iali.
They found on him a remote control with a key. And they tried to use this remote control, and they found that this was the remote control and the key of the gate for entering in the home of the first victim, Vincenzo Iali.
Jason Marshall is arrested and charged with the murder of Vincenzo Iali. He is also charged with the attempted murder of a 55-year-old man earlier that night.
È Jason Peter Marshall, il 25enne inglese di Greenwich che i carabinieri del nucleo investigativo di Frascati hanno arrestato per il delitto del 68enne. 2 sere fa lo stesso killer era stato arrestato dalla polizia per un'altra aggressione a Roma. Stessa dinamica come quella del delitto, ma fortunatamente con un esito differente.
Now it's up to the Italian justice system to decide his fate. Italy correspondent Michael Day covers the trial of Jason Marshall.
We decided to go down to the court in Frosinone, which is about 70 kilometres south of Rome. We got on the train and went down there, and we sat through the case.
Francesco Bruscini is appointed by the Italian state to be Marshall's lawyer.
First time I met Marshall. Marshall was very quiet, and he said in every minute, I am innocent. And so I believed him.
As the trial opens, the court hears the details of the attacks on both Vincenzo Iali and the other victim. In both instances, Marshall presents himself as an MI5 intelligence officer. Psychiatric tests presented to court claim Marshall has psychosis, delusions, Asperger's, and a personality disorder.
And from the brief time I actually watched him, he did seem quite disturbed. He seemed very angry. Sometimes he seemed quite far away. And at a certain point, the accused started shouting at the judge, and he said, oh, for God's sake, get on with it, I've been doing this for months. Incredibly angry, like he thought he shouldn't be there, like he was the victim in all this. It was very strange.
As the trial proceeds, Marshall's behavior becomes ever more erratic.
He said, I am the incarnation of the Archangel Gabriel, that is the messenger of God. I am here for a prophecy. The jail is full of demons, but I am here and I am a guardian against the evil.
Marshall is an individual who's been classified as experiencing psychosis. A psychotic episode can make you very paranoid. It can make you believe that you are a completely different person. Maybe you're Jesus. So it's a very real condition where you act outside the realms of normality, and also you are not necessarily culpable for those actions because you are not within your right mind.
The court is not convinced by Jason Marshall's defense. With the evidence stacked up against him, Marshall is found guilty of both murder and attempted murder. However, due to his psychiatric report, he is given a lesser sentence of 16 years imprisonment in Italy.
Jason Marshall has been jailed for his horrific crimes in Italy. As yet, he's unaware that back in the UK, police uncover evidence linking him to another murder.
The murder of Peter Fasoli in Northolt, London.
British national Jason Marshall is serving life in prison in Italy for murder and attempted murder. But his past is soon to catch up with him.
Chris Murgatroyd is researching the family tree on a hard drive of a computer recovered from his uncle, Peter Fasoli's house, following a fire which killed Peter 22 months earlier. But Chris has discovered a webcam file revealing his uncle wasn't alone on the night he died. He had invited another man over, and their whole meeting was captured on Peter's webcam.
As he walked in, sort of, he spoke casually with Peter. They appeared to know each other and appeared to have met before. From memory, they did say about, I think Peter said to the man that he'd missed him.
But Chris notices something distinctive about the way this man is dressed.
He appeared in the video to be dressed as a police officer. He sort of came in, he had sort of a black jacket on. When he took this off, he had a badge hanging from his neck. He also had a gun holster and stated to Peter that he was from the police.
Far from being alone on the night he supposedly died in an accidental fire, Peter Fasoli had actually invited a date over to his home. This man was Jason Marshall. And it appears his intentions for that evening were very different to Peter's.
And sort of slowly slipping through and skipping back and forth, it became quite clear that something seriously wrong was going on.
Chris immediately contacts the police, and the true horror of the contents of the tape are revealed.
As the clip goes on, it obviously turns very dark and very sinister very quickly as Marshall takes control of the situation. Marshall demands that he hands over his PIN number to his bank account, threatens him with violence, to cut out his tongue even, and then starts to abuse him and to essentially to torture him.
At this point, Peter seemed very uncomfortable, was asking for this to stop, and it sort of just carried on.
Peter endures what appears to be a sadistic torture for hours.
Did he get out of this? Was this part of the role play? Did he come away from this alive? Did he leave and then the fire broke out? So it's a point of having to know.
The video shows Jason Marshall inject Peter Fassely up to 4 times with a liquid, and then smother him with a pillow before wrapping cling film around his face, suffocating him.
The way he suffocated him, I just can't go into it. It's always that bit sets me off. It's just the last bit I can't cope with. I still can't now. I can't do it. Sorry.
One of the most unsettling parts of this case is that the classic FM radio station is playing throughout this scene as it unfolds over the various hours. And so you have the juxtaposition of a horrific murder happening in front of you and the strains of classic FM playing in the background.
The fact that this beautiful music, this calming, soothing, incredible tunes would be being played in the last moments of an individual's horrific murder, the juxtaposition is harrowing.
Peter is now unconscious. The video continues to capture Jason Marshall in the house. Although Peter is not moving, his guest continues to remain in roleplay.
This is quite shocking. Even after he'd suffocated his victim, he was lying either dead or dying on the floor, that Marshall kept speaking into the radio.
He's pretending to be on there, calling someone to help him, calling police officers or calling someone, talking about, you know, I need your help. But yeah, no one was going to come and help, were they? He knew he was going to leave solely for dead. And yet he continued with his psychotic ideas.
The video recording shows Jason Marshall's behavior becoming increasingly unusual.
He then did something truly bizarre.
He actually did something over his body. Bearing in mind, he wouldn't know that the webcam was on or being recorded.
He did a half-hearted cross across his chest, and he uttered words in Latin, which mean in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. It was a very, very bizarre thing to do.
Peter Fassely is dead, murdered by Jason Marshall, who then appears to snap out of his role play and remove any evidence of being at the scene.
He then spent 10-15 minutes cleaning up the scene, tidying up his possessions, wiping down the areas that he might have touched, flushing the toilet 4 times as he was obviously cleaning up and getting rid of any evidence that he could.
Marshall sprinkled some kind of inflammatory material on the hob.
And then after a minute or so, you can actually hear the flames starting to burn. And it's at that point that the tape stops to roll.
He set fire to that property and walked out and left Peter, our victim, for dead.
In January 2013, police had ruled Peter Fassely's death to be an accident. But now, 22 months on, they have evidence he was in fact murdered.
I sort of broke down a bit. I didn't really know at that point where to go, of where do we go from here. It changed what we thought was a simple accidental death to somebody had done this to my Uncle Peter.
I couldn't comprehend it. It was like it wasn't in reality. I couldn't believe it. Everything was going through my head. You know, why, who, how, you know, and I just didn't know.
Police have a killer caught on camera. They need to find Jason Marshall, and they need to find him fast.
Once you find out who he is, you look into all his background, intelligence background, all the databases you go to, you know, social networking, everything.
When police look at Peter's digital activities, they notice Marshall had arranged to meet Peter via social media site Badoo on the day he was murdered.
Peter Fasoli was gay, and part of his lifestyle was going online and meeting young people.
They'd met up once before in the December, and that was actually their second meeting where the victim had invited Marshall to come to his flat.
But as police delve deeper into the pair's online communications, they discover that just hours before they were due to meet, Marshall messaged Peter to cancel.
Marshall took a few steps that were clearly calculated to try and cover up his involvement in the death.
He continued to contact Peter Fasoli on Badoo, suggesting that, we didn't meet up that night, I'm sorry I let you down, covering his tracks, so putting police off his scent, if you like.
He sent a message essentially saying, I'm sorry I couldn't come last night, but he was laying the groundwork for an alibi.
Jason Marshall had tried to cover his tracks, making out he had never met Peter on the day of his death. But police have the pair on camera, and now they uncover something else. When police contact Peter's bank, they discover someone used his bank card to withdraw cash. The culprit was caught on the ATM's CCTV camera, and it clearly shows Jason Marshall.
He withdrew £780 from his account, so that that was another part of the murder, that he'd done it essentially to gain money out of the victim's bank account.
And when police look further into the transactions on Peter's account, they discover Marshall left the country just 4 days after he murdered Peter Fasoli.
The Metropolitan Police had found that some plane tickets had been bought to Italy using money from Peter's account, or from Peter's name, under the name of Jason Marshall.
Only a few days later, he left the country. He booked himself a flight to Italy. He booked himself a return back to the UK.
But it appears Marshall never took that return flight. Instead, he stayed in Rome.
A killer has slipped through the net. And in Italy, he goes on to commit 2 more heinous crimes. 22 months on, UK police are finally on his trail and ready to bring him back to face justice. But who is Jason Marshall? And what turned this Londoner into a cold-blooded serial killer?
An arrest warrant was issued for Jason Marshall. He was flown over from Italy to the UK, and then he was arrested for Mr. Fasoli's murder when he landed at Heathrow.
All that evidence was there on that computer, so that would have been the evidence to bring him back to this country and charge him and put him before the court.
Yes, a bizarre and gruesome case, Jane, which almost never came to court. The story goes back to January 2013, when Peter Fasoli's body was found at his house where there'd been a fire. Now, initially, investigators ruled...
Jason Marshall faces trial at the Old Bailey for the murder of 58-year-old Peter Fasoli. When Marshall enters the dock, the British public first set their eyes on this serial killer.
One of the striking things about Jason Marshall is how calm and calculated he seemed. He was very calm, very measured. When he gave evidence, he explained his story with very little emotion and obviously no regrets or apologies for what he'd done.
He came across like you could pass him in the street, he could be anybody. He sat there without a reaction on his face. But to me, it sort of made me quite angry, sat in the gallery watching him, to not see any sort of look of remorse on his face.
I stared him out. My way of dealing with it was staring at him.
As Jason Marshall stands trial, the shocking truth behind his crimes comes to light. With 2 murders and an attempted murder committed in just 1 month, what could have turned this man into a violent, sadistic killer?
Jason Marshall was taken into foster care when he was 10 years old, a difficult upbringing. And there was some evidence during the case of him suffering from Asperger's syndrome and having various learning difficulties.
As Marshall grew into a young adult, he continued to lead a chaotic life.
He didn't really have an ordered life. He didn't have future-oriented goals. He kind of was a man who lived in the moment, which is the way a lot of people with personality disorders might live their life.
But Marshall experiences a brief moment of stability.
In 2012, he held down a job during the Olympics to be believed as a cleaner. But when he was employed, he seemed to be, when he had kind of a regimented, getting up in the morning and going to work, that really helped him. He went to work, he had some purpose.
However, his deteriorating mental health catches up with him.
He had depression, he clearly was psychotic, clearly had a lot of mental health issues. And then when he lost his job, he hit the bottle, then he spiraled into a depression, psychotic, and the mental health issues then were enhanced because he was drinking far too much. And then this is where he spiraled and he was isolated. And I suppose that's where the real concern is.
No longer employed, Marshall decided to create a job of his own.
He would go around impersonating law enforcement agents or police officers, travelling around on the tube, apparently trying to solve crimes and catch miscreants. He had gone out, tooled up with his utility belt and his fake police badge, and he'd carried with him a small terrier dog, which he pretended was his sniffer dog.
But this unusual behaviour soon spirals out of control. In Marshall's chaotic mind, the lines between what was real and what was fantasy began to merge into one.
Marshall would fantasise, act out and seemingly believe that he was a police officer, but he would portray this as it was his absolute fact and try to convince and coerce others into the same belief system.
And even on the night that he killed Peter Fasoli, he was ill-equipped, if you like, and he believed he had grandiose ideas about who he was. And I truly believed that he actually thought he was either an agent or a police officer, and he was in his own little world.
Is this what turned him into a killer?
I strongly believe that Marshall was an individual who was born with a predisposition, DNA-wise, to be a killer. His sexual gratification is gained through making others helpless and vulnerable. He gains his pleasure from watching his victims in distress and pain. That's what turns him on. That's what's terrifying about this individual.
The trial into the murder of Peter Fasoli comes to a close. Jason Marshall is found guilty. He is sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 39 years behind bars.
Seeing Jason Marshall brought to justice and put in front of a jury sort of did really help close that chapter for me, knowing that the person responsible had been found and brought to justice for what he did to Peter.
But we have got justice for what he's done. And he stays in there and he suffers. He just stays in there. What he's done, what he's put everybody through, not just our family, but everybody else's.
This case is a one of a kind. It was really shocking to see the footage being played in court, one of the most unusual things I think I've seen in my career as a court reporter.
With the case now closed, it is still hard to understand how authorities missed a murder.
The question does come of what investigation was done around then.
It's quite extraordinary that whoever investigated this scene overlooked these key pieces of evidence.
But there must have been some signs on his body that wasn't just a smoke. To me, it felt like if these restrained him, there should have been some restraint marks showing up on his body, on his skin. That always played on my mind, but to me, I don't think they looked as much as they should have done. That's going back on it in my mind.
I think what shocks me about this case is how sad it was that Peter Fasoli died and it was accepted that it was an accidental death. Because Marshall wasn't arrested for that, he went on to murder and attempt to murder somebody else.
For Peter's family, the horror of watching his death unfold on camera is something that will live with them forever.
It made me, at the time, quite sick in wondering if I'd have found this video earlier, could I have stopped those others? But every time that I sort of close my eyes trying to go to sleep, it is sort of, I get the images of seeing sort of Peter's flat, and sort of finding it hard then to actually get myself to sleep, just thinking about that footage. It still sticks in. If I think about it, I can still see the room as it is from the video footage.
I do miss him. He'll always be my brother no matter what. No one can take that away from me. And I've got memories that no one can take. He can't take them memories away from me. He'll be my brother.
Having almost got away with the murder of Peter Fasoli, there's one burning question. Could Jason Marshall have killed more?
It has crossed my mind and does make me still think, is there something that Jason Marshall did prior to this? Was there other offences that we still not yet know about?
If he's done that to my brother, done it to somebody else, he must have done it to someone before. And that's all I kept going through my head. He can't be the only one. I think he's done it before.
Hello, police emergency. What's your emergency?
Is it possible to get away with murder? What does a killer do after committing the most heinous of crimes? Do they carry on as normal and hide in plain sight? Or go on the run?
He messaged at 3:05 in the morning and told me to come and get him.
How do the actions of a killer after their crime influence the police investigation?
It was a very, very brutal attack, a slaying, really.
His behaviour, very sure of what he was going to do.
By focusing on the aftermath, we unpick the mindset of a killer, understand the motive, and reveal what the killer did next.
"31-year-old Daniel Seggi and his dad Jeff, 59, moved to this quiet street of family homes following Jeff's divorce.
Mackworth is it's lovely. There's lots of wide open green spaces. It's a tight-knit community. This family's been living on this estate since it was built in the early 50s and they're still here now.
Jeff and Dan soon settled into life on the street.
Daniel worked at a care home in Mickleover, which is one of the nicer suburbs of Derby. He was just a normal guy. He was a Derby County football fan. He used to enjoy sports. But he wasn't one for going out and drinking or womanising or anything like that. He was just an all-round normal guy.
Despite the split within the family, Dan and his dad remained close to his mum and brother.
Jeff and his ex-wife were separated, but they were still good friends. She'd sort out his bank account and his payments for him. Jeff Seggy was 59. He worked at Available Car in Castle Donington, about 20 minutes outside Derby. Daniel's brother also worked there. They used to travel together in the morning and travel back at night.
Soon after moving in, Dan met mother of two, Zoe, and the pair started seeing each other frequently.
So I've known Dan over 3 years. I used to go to Dan's house a lot. He'd invite me around for dinner.
As the pair's relationship went from strength to strength, they spent more time together as a family, walking Zoe's dogs and playing with her children.
He's been involved in my life, my children's life. He was always the caring one, the one that did everything for everyone else.
But life for the young courting couple was about to change.
On Wednesday, 30th November 2016, Daniel Seggy was running household errands as normal, dropping into the bank and picking up a takeaway dinner. Daniel arranges to meet up with Zoe, his girlfriend, the next day to go shopping.
I was supposed to be having Dan come round in the morning to take me into town to get a few winter bits for the children. We were just going in for winter coats or something, and he said he'd come to mine for about 10 in the morning. He sent me a message saying he was on the way, and then just didn't turn up. So I messaged him, I gave him a couple of hours. I thought he's obviously busy or something's come up with work, he'll get in touch with me when he needs to. And then it went out to the whole day where nothing had happened. I've not had anything back, my messages hadn't delivered, so his phone was clearly switched off. I tried ringing him numerous times, just got nothing. And I was worried.
As hours passed and Zoe still couldn't get hold of Daniel, she decided to go in search of him.
So I went to his house.
But on arrival, Zoe was shocked at what she found.
There's all police wire and everything outside his house. So I asked the police what had happened. They said they couldn't tell me. And then they said there'd been a body found. I literally went to my mum and dad's crying, and I was just in another world. I just thought it was a dream.
The next morning, news spreads around the neighborhood that police had been called to the scene of a murder.
It was a shock, because it was something that never really happens in Mackworth Estate, to know that somebody had actually been murdered. And of course, my first concern was it a robbery gone wrong? Was it a fight?
Journalist Martin Naylor was on the story as it broke.
I was in the office on the morning that we started to receive correspondence, mainly through social media, that there was a large police presence in Mackworth, in Derby. There was a white tent outside the property. There were the forensics teams were there, as you'd expect, the police in the white coats going in and out the property, and quite a reasonable section of Marylebone Crescent was cordoned off.
With police releasing few details, rumours are rife. Who is the victim? What exactly has gone on in this respectable neighbourhood?
Jeff's ex-wife had been trying to contact both Jeff and Daniel and were unable to contact either of them.
Jeff Seggy was a man of a routine. So if he said he'd do something at 7 o'clock each day, he tended to do it at 7 o'clock. If he did it at 8 o'clock, he'd do it.
Part of Jeff's routine means he speaks to his youngest son every morning. So when he didn't hear from his dad for 2 days, he became concerned.
Police knocked down the door at Marrowbone Crescent in Mackworth on December the 1st because they'd had contact from the Seggy family who were expressing their concern.
But as police enter the house, they're confronted by a bloodbath.
The victim was laid on the bed having been attacked. There had been no attempt to conceal the body or dispose of the body.
The victim is 59-year-old Jeff Seggy. And worryingly, son Daniel is nowhere to be seen. The post-mortem on Jeff reveals a sustained and violent attack.
The post-mortem examination revealed that he'd suffered around 60 stab wounds, mainly to the neck, chest and head area, and also that he'd then been attacked with a hammer. There were about 20 hammer injuries. It was a very, very brutal attack. A slaying, really.
The nature of it did surprise me, yeah. How could somebody do that? When you learn those sorts of things, it is shocking.
We started to piece things together ourselves here. It was an attack, it was a burglary gone wrong, it was a bungled burglary where someone's, attacked someone and killed someone.
Police launch a murder investigation. They urgently need to find son Daniel to see if he can help the search for the killer. But Daniel Seggy is missing.
I thought that someone's attacked Jeff and they've obviously took Dan, abducted him or hurt him. And where is he?
Police need to find a killer. They need to uncover a motive. They need to find out what was going on in Jeff's life. Who would want him dead? Police speak with his ex-wife, Daniel's mum, who had reported her concerns to them. She reveals Daniel has been pretending to be his father in phone calls and texts to her and his brother for the past 2 days.
He used his father's phone to send a text to his brother.
And he also called him as well, and clearly the call wasn't from Jeff Seggy, it was from Daniel. Something wasn't right. He'd obviously not seen his dad for 2 days. He used to see him every day, so the police became involved.
Jeff is dead. His son Daniel is missing. And that's not all.
He's missing, and actually his father's car's missing as well. So, it's a big clue for the investigators.
Police need to find Daniel Seggy, but not as a missing person, as a suspect.
But with results of the post-mortem leading police to believe Jeff Seggy has been dead for 3 days, Daniel Seggy could be anywhere.
They turn to the one person they know Daniel is close to, Zoe. The last person to hear from Daniel before he went missing.
He sent me a message and said he'd been a brave soldier, that he'd been to A&E, gone and got some stitches and an injection, told me about some painkillers he had.
Daniel told Zoe he had cut his finger and needed stitches. Crucially, this appears to be on the same night police believe Jeff Seggy was murdered.
He showed me the injury, saying that he did it on a knife or Stanley blade at work.
Police now believe Daniel Seggy was behind the brutal attack on his father and had cut his hand during the frenzied assault. But where is he now?
They knew he was in a vehicle, and they knew the registration number of the vehicle. So to track Daniel down, there's the AMPR system, which tracks number plates and will be able to identify where cars are. Around the country, there's many, many thousands of cameras that would be able to track the vehicle.
Daniel Seggy has taken his father's black Honda Civic car and he's driven that through Staffordshire and down to Cardiff.
Daniel's father's car is picked up by motorway cameras arriving in Cardiff. It It's then spotted by CCTV in the town centre. Daniel parks up and walks away. Then the trail goes cold.
On December the 1st, Daniel, after leaving the car in a car park in Cardiff, he switched his mobile phone off so that he was uncontactable.
Police now have a problem. Daniel has dumped the car. Number plate recognition technology has helped the police as much as it can. And now Daniel has switched off his phone, so police cannot trace the signal to pinpoint his location. What is Daniel going to do next? And how dangerous is he?
By now, the police investigation was gathering huge amounts of pace. Obviously, there was a manhunt going on. He could have had knives on him, he could have had other weapons on him. They weren't sure about that at that pace, so it was their priority to locate him.
When Dan Seggy goes on the run, as far as the police are concerned, this is a man with great potential. They need to find him fast because he could be armed, he could be dangerous, and he could strike again.
4 days after the murder, and press interest is growing as the hunt for Daniel Seggy intensifies.
I recall being told by the Detective Chief Inspector that, they needed to get Daniel Seggy, they needed to get him quick. The reason being, they didn't know if he had any weapons on him. So the whole investigation, we now know, was relatively covert. And I also understand that Zoe was helping the police at that time, trying to find out his whereabouts.
The police first made contact by knocking on the door. They came in and asked me questions, how well I knew Dan, how long I've known him, if I knew his whereabouts or where he could have gone. I was literally getting dragged into the police station every day. I ended up just staying in the police station, one of the secret officers or whatever it was. And that's when I told me to make the contact with Dan.
Well, through the police, Zoe was contacting Daniel through social media and through his mobile phone, texting him, trying to find out the location of where he was so that the police could go there and arrest him.
But for 2 days, Daniel Seggy remains elusive. The last sighting police have is of Daniel walking away from his dad's car in Cardiff.
It's difficult to understand, why did he go to Cardiff in the first instance? What was there in Cardiff and why would you go there? It's not an obvious choice from Derby.
Daniel Seggy's phone is still off. Police trawl CCTV cameras in Cardiff city centre and suddenly spot him.
Daniel, after leaving the car in a car park in Cardiff, then went to Cardiff railway station.
What is really telling about the CCTV footage is that he has nothing with him. He has no possessions, not even a coat, no toothbrush, nothing to suggest permanence. So is Dan Seggy planning to potentially end his own life? That would be in keeping with the actions of his behaviour.
Police are concerned about what he might do next. Then suddenly, a breakthrough.
Dan first made contact with me on the 5th of December at 7:15. He sent me a message saying, "I'm sorry, I honestly don't know what's happening. My heart is broken, but also my mind. I have no idea what has happened this past week. It's like I've been asleep for a week and woken up in a nightmare. I'm so scared and confused. I honestly don't know what to do. All I want to do is hug you. I love you and the boys forever. Never forget that. You are not just my girlfriend, you're my best friend and I love you."
Zoe tells police Dan has made contact. Immediately, she's taken to the station. Zoe is now a pawn in the manhunt for a killer.
The police that was running the case was trying to get me to speak to him, see if I could get him to communicate, find out where he was. then made contact with Dan, saying, "I'm really worried about you, Dan. Please don't be scared. The boys and I want to see you." And I asked him where you are. I got something, I think it was 24 hours later, and said, "I really want to see you too, but I can't. I'm so far away and I can't remember how I got here. I have no money to get home, my wallet is gone and I'm all alone. I wish I was with you, I'm so sorry. I'm somewhere north, I wish I was okay, but I'm tired and alone and I feel so confused. I don't want you to worry, I will be okay and I love you." He then said, "I wish I could just come round and give you all a hug. I wish I could tell you that I'm okay, but I'm not. I am safe, but I think I need to work out what to do." Sorry.
With Daniel engaging with Zoe, police seized the opportunity to discover his whereabouts.
The police then suggested that I made out that I was going to fetch Dan to try and get him to hand himself in. So then I told him, "I'll come and get you in my car." He told me, "I'm too far away."
Within minutes, Daniel Segui reveals to Zoe and waiting police the city where he is hiding out.
He was in Glasgow.
Derbyshire police immediately contact Police Scotland. With a violent killer on the loose, they need to corner Daniel Segui fast. What had turned this gentle care worker into the brutal killer of his own father?
Tuesday, November the 29th, 2016, should have been like any other day in the Segui household, in a quiet suburb of Derby. Jeff had finished work, said goodbye to his other son, with whom he had worked, and returned home.
What we now know is that when Jeff was preparing to go to bed, he was attacked by his son, Daniel, towards the end of the evening, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something along those lines. It was a vicious and a savage killing. There were more than 60 stab wounds, and then he'd hit him more than 20 times with a hammer.
When Daniel was attacking his father, it seems that his father was in quite a vulnerable position. He didn't have any clothes on, he was in his bedroom. That made him incredibly vulnerable, and that didn't seem to bother Daniel at all. Whatever was driving him to kill his father was much, much stronger than that.
Following the murder, Daniel went and purchased a Chinese takeaway. Then he came and ate that back at the home, which one may think is quite odd, having just killed your father, and then one would almost expect the person to run away and escape the area very quickly.
Daniel went to the Royal Derby Hospital, where he was treated at A&E for a cut to his hand, quite a deep cut. Now, he'd gone to, when he checked himself in at A&E, he told the nurses there that he cut that making a sandwich. Now, that was quite heavily strapped, heavily bandaged, and then he went home.
Dan Segui also texts his girlfriend to tell her that he's had an injury. He says he's been a brave little soldier. So he is creating this nice weaved alibi. But again, it just demonstrates that he's connecting himself with the crime. So he's obsessing about what he's done.
It's really difficult to understand what's going on in his mind at the time. And partly it may be that by continuing to behave in a normal way, it almost takes him away from what he's done. And it gives him some time, and it gives him some time to think about what his next steps are going to be.
Every morning at 7 a.m, Jeff Seggy would call or message his other son before they'd meet at work. But on Wednesday, 30th of November, Daniel took on the role of his dad and kept normality ticking along by sending his routine text message.
Sent him a text saying that he wasn't going to go into work that day, and he was quite suspicious about that, thinking, well, that's not like his dad.
It was never going to be convincing. So what is Dan Seggy trying to do here? Does he really believe that he can manipulate the world around him to get the gain that he desires? He wanted a period of time to adjust to the knowledge that soon he would not be free for a very long time.
Next, Daniel sent a text to his mother claiming to be Jeff.
Daniel sent a text message from his father's phone to Jeff's ex-wife, asking her to transfer £100 from his savings account to his current account.
Later that day, Daniel Seggy goes about his business as usual, visiting the cash machine on the high street where he withdraws £100 from his father's account. And then to McDonald's, where he is caught on their CCTV cameras. This is footage of a son who has murdered his father in the most brutal attack.
When he goes to McDonald's to get some dinner, you can't help but question what was going through his mind, because the last thing you would imagine he would be thinking about is his tummy after he's murdered somebody violently. But doesn't that show potentially some real disassociation? As in, he's done it, but he's not really contemplating the enormity of his actions, so he just carries around his normal business.
He was just acting like it was everyday life, like he was just carrying on. He was like smiling and smirking. It's just out of character for him. Just not something you'd ever expect.
Daniel Seggy then returns to the house he shares with his dad, Jeff, now laying dead in his bed.
I find it strange that he stayed in the house with the body for 2 days, because so much anger in that killing, and he stays there. So at some level, he's thinking, I've done the right thing. I'm justified in what I did. He's not frightened of his own violence. He's not frightened of what he's done. He's stayed there with the body. He's comfortable being there with the body.
It's now that Daniel decides to flee the scene of crime. He goes on the run in his father's car. But first he makes another stop at a bank. And CCTV from the cashier's desk shows a smiling killer.
He then withdrew some cash, £300 cash. That demonstrates his lack of thinking it through. Why would you not have cash in the first instance? So he knew he was going to kill him, but he didn't know what to do afterwards. And you know, it brings it back to why did he stay in the house overnight? He was perhaps thinking about what to do, because he got no means of escape. If he got no cash, then how was he going to escape?
When he goes to the bank, you can see that what he's really craving is some kind of interaction. You know, he stays as long as he can talking to the actual cashier, and he's talking about his injury. Yes, that's partly to do with covering his tracks, creating some kind of alibi, but also it's about that human interaction. He's craving something. You almost feel a loneliness there.
Having withdrawn more cash, Daniel Seggy leaves Derby in his father's car, heading for Cardiff. By this stage, his brother, having not seen his dad, Jeff, for 2 days, becomes suspicious, and he calls the police.
When they got there, they found Jeff's body on his bed, covered in a duvet.
Okay, so I was commissioned to chair an independent review into the circumstances surrounding the homicide. It's interesting that this particular case, there hadn't been any agency involvement, but nothing to indicate that the outcome would have been as horrific as it is, and certainly there was nothing to indicate that it was an abusive relationship. The initial suspicions have got to be that Daniel was involved. Daniel's not in the house, Jeff's there dead, there's no contact with Daniel, why wouldn't Daniel report it? You know, so Daniel has got to be a prime suspect from straight away.
With police in the house in Mackworth, Daniel Seggy is 150 miles away in Cardiff, having driven off in his father's car. He heads to the train station.
He bought himself a ticket using cash to go to Glasgow, and he took a train to Glasgow from Cardiff.
Six and a half hours later, Daniel Seggy arrives in Glasgow.
It seems to be it was more of a random, I'm just going to go to that location and then I'll think about the next location after that. There doesn't seem to have been a great deal of planning.
Looking at his journey after he left the house, he just seems to be trying to put as much distance between him and his father's body as humanly possible. And he didn't seem to have an end destination in mind.
Daniel Seggy joins the ticket queue. To everyone else around him, he is just another traveller. They have no idea there's a killer in their midst.
On December the 2nd, having arrived in Glasgow, he bought a ticket to Thurso in the far north of Scotland, and he also checked in at a hotel for 2 nights.
With the next train to Thurso 2 days away, Daniel Seggy lays low in a hostel in Glasgow. And it seems something was playing on his mind.
Made some internet searches around police investigation, and I guess he was trying to understand what the police would be doing, you know, how they would be actively going around pursuing him. Quite interesting, because what it shows is a lack of organisation or a lack of thinking through about what he's going to do after he's committed the murder. You know, to start looking at the internet to see how police investigate is, you know, you would expect that to have been done beforehand.
And that's not all Daniel Seggy does. It's at this point he decides to reach out to the one person he feels he can confide in, his girlfriend, Zoe.
On December the 5th, Daniel sent a text message down to his friend Zoe.
Sent me a message saying, "I'm sorry, I honestly don't know what's happening. My heart is broken, but also my mind."
But Daniel Seggy's actions actually lead police right to his hiding place.
Dan Seggy is on the run for 5 days. That's a long time to be knowledgeable about the crime you've committed, to be running out of money, to be missing home, missing the people you potentially loved. He's lured in through his girlfriend. I imagine that when he was talking to her, he had absolute trust for her because he had deep feelings and deep meaning with her. So the fact that she was able to be used by the police to draw him in, whilst that was really important and necessary, it would have been incredibly difficult for Dan Seggy to process.
I think Dan was scared and panicked. I think Dan knew he was going to get found out. He left a lot of evidence behind. So it was just his biding his time, really. He messaged at 3:05 in the morning and told me he's at the jury's in. That's when the police went and arrested him.
The police arrested Daniel Seggy in the reception of the hotel where he'd been staying for 2 nights.
When Dan Seggy's arrested, you can clearly see he's waiting for it. He's expecting it. He's recognised that it's just a waiting game. It's almost as if when he's led away, he's just accepted it. And there seems to be little shame, little concern, just a readiness.
Daniel had led police on a manhunt across 3 countries, from Derbyshire to Wales, and finally to Scotland. But it was his text to girlfriend Zoe revealing his location which sealed his fate.
I was at the police station in Derby, so I knew he'd obviously been arrested. He wouldn't have been expecting it. He'd honestly thought it was me then, and then he'd probably have given me some rough idea what had happened, and he'd probably plan his next move. I don't think he would have tried to come back to Derby with me, but I think it was more he wanted to see me for comfort, sort of thing.
With Daniel in custody, police hope he will crack under questioning and reveal a motive behind the horrific crime. What would drive a loving son to kill his father?
During his police interview, he obviously doesn't make any comment, which is his right.
But obviously, I thought Dan was innocent. I thought it was all a mistake and I didn't know what was going off, so I just presumed they would question Dan and then he'd be walking out and it would all be a dream. That's something else. He'd give an explanation why this has happened.
My understanding is that it was a no-comment interview all the way through. I don't think he gave away any information.
Police had found the murder weapons under Daniel's bed. The packaging of the knife hidden between the wall and his bed, his fingerprints all over it. The evidence against Daniel Segui was overwhelming, yet still he refused to speak to police.
Daniel Segui has picked up quite a fearsome knife and chosen to attack his father in such a vicious way. And then once that's happened, he's then picked up a hammer and done that as well. Now, whether the hammer was to hand, whether he took the weapons into the bedroom, whether there was that couple of minutes of pre-planning where he said in his head, I'm going to do this, only Daniel Segui will know.
Something's happened and it's created the situation, and then it's kind of a panic and something that's taken over, and he's panicked and lost control and all that kind of thing. But it's not the behaviour you would associate with an average kid that goes to school, has a fun-loving guy who thinks about his family and thinks family is everything. It's not the kind of behaviour you'd expect with that. So, where something's obviously tipped him over the edge, whatever that is.
When there is such anger, when somebody feels that they need to lash out in this way, in a single event, it's because probably that in the past, when this person has upset them, they have had no control. And usually that's things that may have happened in childhood, abusive behaviours, all sorts of abuses that perhaps parents are in a position to mete out.
Daniel Segui is charged with murdering his father. As yet, the police have no motive. Once again, they turn to Daniel's girlfriend, Zoe. Could she be the key to discovering what lay behind this brutal crime? 1 month after his arrest, and he agrees to a visit from Zoe at the prison where he is on remand.
It was scary, obviously. I've never been to somewhere like that before. It's not something I was ever wanting to go. It's just odd environment, and then just seeing him there, he just looked so vulnerable and it just so out of place. It wasn't for him, the sort of person I knew. He looked all quiet and scared, but he said he was getting on with everyone. He was keeping his head down, telling me still he's innocent, because I asked him to try and tell me what had happened, but he just turned off the subject. He wasn't interested.
With Daniel revealing nothing further as to why he had committed this most horrific crime, it's left for him to face his fate. Almost 6 months after the murder of Jeff Segge, his son Daniel appears at court for his trial. But it appears, once again, he doesn't want to have to account for his actions on that day.
He pleaded guilty at the first opportunity at Nottingham Crown Court.
Ultimately, he could have said anything because his father, Jeff, was dead. Jeff couldn't say, no, that didn't happen. You know, a lot of it was down to Daniel, so he could have said all sorts of things, but he chose not to.
I think he pleaded guilty because he felt justified at some level for doing what he had done. The controversial part is that he won't say what that motivation is. But there is one. There's always a motivation with all murders. And him refusing to say what it is means it's very personal.
When Daniel Segge appeared at court for sentencing, the judge revealed the extent of the injuries to his father. Jeff Segge's carotid artery had been severed, leading to immediate death.
Daniel Segge didn't show very much emotion at all. There was just a neutral reaction from him. I do remember he had a hearing loop on. He was listening to the proceedings going on.
When I saw Dan in court, he was a completely different person. This is when I started thinking, maybe there is more to this than what he was letting on and the Dan I knew, because there was just no remorse. He was just in the box, come straight in. He didn't even acknowledge his family or myself, my sister, all his friends. He just turned away. He was just looking straight to the judge like he had other things to do and he wanted it to all be over with.
The judge sentenced him to life with a minimum tariff of 20 years.
Well, the judge told Daniel that he'd carried out a brutal, merciless and sustained attack on a naked man in his own bedroom, and that his father must have suffered considerable pain and anguish.
They'd send him down. Daniel just took his hearing loop off, stood up, and walked off. There was very little eye contact with his family or with anyone in the public gallery or the press bench, not even with his own barrister. He just took the hearing loop off and walked off.
Justice has been served, but for the family and friends, there are questions which may never be answered.
In a victim's statement read out in court, Daniel's mother said she still loved her son, but hated what he'd done, and was left asking why.
I think something snapped in Daniel Segge and he attacked his father. I don't know what it is that snapped, but something did.
When you look at this case, it's hard to imagine that there weren't any driving forces or triggers behind Dan Segge's murdering his father. But the truth is, people do have the potential to snap, even for some of the most simplest scenarios. So there is also a possibility that Dan Segge was just another killer.
Perhaps no one will ever know what drove Daniel Segge to murder his father. After all, there's only two people who know what took place that day and why. One of them is in prison, and one of them is dead.
It's still a massive shock, even like a year down the line, because people ask me about him and I'm still there defending the guy. Like, Dan I'll still always stick up for. He was always the guy that never did anything wrong to me. He always supported me. He always had my back and my kids. It still seems unbelievable, but obviously the evidence is there. He's been sentenced and he's got to do his time. But I try and forget about that and just try and think about the good Dan and the good times we had and try and blank that bit out.